Welcome to Architrave Gaming. I'm the Archmaster. So this is a channel about D&D and making your D&D worlds actually interesting and fantastic instead of just boring bog standard fantasy, Europe, Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, Forgotten Realms, all the boring stuff that we've had for so long. This is actually something that's interesting and new and fantastic. Here's an idea. Did you know that in real life there's a nickel absorbing tree where in real life we have miners who mine nickel in nickel mines, right? And there's all this, nickel dust in the air and whatnot. And so they go and they plant these trees after they're done and wait like 5 years or something. And they go and they harvest the trees and pour out the sap, and the sap is all green. It absorbed the nickel dust from the ground and it put it in the sap. It's a literal real thing. What if we take that and multiply it by 100%? What if trees are actually like made of metal? You plant it in the ground, it absorbs the metal. Like you plant it on an iron vein, iron ore, and its roots go down, they pull up the iron, so the tree like gets all iron. It can be rough or spiky, it can rust in the rain, it can be made of gold or silver. Like instead of like mining underground with the dwarves, what if people just got their metal from the trees? Wouldn't that be cool? That's one example of doing something that's fantastic, doing something in a fantasy world instead of just boring bog standard what we have in real life. Let's do something fantastic, right? You can have so many things with this. It connects with so many other things in my world, but that would be too many subjects for this video right now. But like trees absorbing metal from the ground, you can have so many other things too. You could say trees absorb corpses, right? You plant a tree in the graveyard and it absorbs all the corpses and makes like flesh or fruit or something, right? And so like the hag or the evil witch can go and like take the fruit and make like a potion of eternal life or something, right? Like you can do so many things with tree planted in ground absorbs X from ground. You can do so much with that, right? It can absorb goodness, it can absorb law, it can absorb all the weapons of the dead people, it can absorb the flesh of corpses, it can absorb all the gold and metal and silver, and maybe like the gold and the platinum trees are super rare, and there's some silver and there's some iron and gold and iron and copper, and those are more common. It's like you can do so much cool stuff with this. Like the king can have this golden tree in his courtyard, right? And then like his nobles all have silver trees, and there's like what kind of fruit do they spawn, right? Like in my world, the different types of metal are tied to what I call ideals. You might know them as alignments, but it's like justice, harmony, benevolence, independence. Those are a few of the good ones. So it's like a gold tree. Gold is tied to benevolence or goodness. And so you take like a golden apple from a golden tree and you eat it and you get healed because that's like a good act. It's a good thing. You have taken goodness into yourself and like life is good, right? So you get life, stuff like that. You can do so many cool things. What happens if you chop down the tree and make stuff out of it? It's a bit of wood and a bit of gold, and like the longer you let it sit there, the more it absorbs. And like these are like sacred, and like the temple likes this tree because it represents good, and people are like priests of good now instead of like priests of gods, because I don't have gods in my world because they're bloody boring. But yeah, anyway, lots of cool stuff you can do from trees absorbing something from the ground. All right, next one is a minor idea, just it's something tiny. Obelisks float over time. So, what if you put an obelisk in the ground and it sits there and it has like a slow magical vibration or humming because it's like a magical obelisk, right? So over time it erodes all the land around it, and it keeps eroding the ground over hundreds or thousands of years. And so you can tell a really old obelisk because it's just sitting there floating and there's no ground around it. It's like a crater and it's just floating where there used to be ground, but it just continually erodes everything, right? That's a cool little idea. All right, here's one. Oceans get more powerful over time. I was doing speech to text, and I said potions get more powerful over time because I was talking about a different idea. But then it said, it misheard me and said oceans get more powerful over time. I was like, oceans get more powerful over time? What does that mean? Do they get more trade routes, or do the seas get more stormy and powerful? Does it like spawn monsters or like attract krakens and giant squids and whatnot and it become more powerful? Or does it become safer with like safer routes and safer things because it's more powerful that way? You can say more ships or fewer ships, or more monsters or fewer monsters, or there's like more or fewer portals to the plane of water, and that gives it some kind of energy or something. Like you could say it gets more powerful over time because it's older, or more shipwrecks fell in it. Man, my nose is itching so much. You can say the more shipwrecks and more treasure that's lost at sea, the more it imbues the ocean with power or something. You can say more whirlpools or tidal waves or something. It can be angry and whatnot. Like just the idea that this ocean is more powerful than that ocean because of some reason, right? Or it grew in power over time because of things that people did there. It's just a cool idea. Like in our world, all the oceans are the same. They're just oceans, and a storm can happen in one as likely as in any other, relatively speaking. We have cold oceans and warmer oceans, but it's like we don't really have interesting stuff where it's like this ocean's more powerful. It's actually 1,000 years old, and it has like it can manifest consciousness and like make kraken tentacles out of its wave out of the water and winds and waves, and it like attacks all the ships and hits the harbors and the coastlines all the time because it's such a powerful sea, a powerful ocean, right? And maybe you have to go and tame it somehow or conquer it. Like, just a cool idea, right? Instead of just boring regular water that just sits there and maybe once in a while the wind tosses it up and makes it a storm. It's like, no, what if it grows more powerful over time, right? And then lastly for this one, an area, only one area where plants can grow. So say, instead of like, you can take a seed and plant it pretty much anywhere and it can grow, right? If you have the right seed and you water it and whatnot. But what if most of the ground was infertile and there were only certain places that any plant could grow at all? That would affect so much world building. If you're a GM, a world builder, you can do so much with this. It's like it's like King of the Hill, where it's like instead of here's all the land, it's like no, this is the only place that anything can grow. Well, the wood elves wanted to be forest. Well, the humans wanted to be farmland. Well, the orcs wanted to be a place where they plant their fleshy limbs and the limbs grow and whatnot. I talked about that in a previous video. It can be so heavily fought over, and maybe they're like, one every couple hundred miles, right? So there were a few other regions all over the world, but maybe only certain plants can grow in certain areas. Like, so yeah, like, plants can't grow anywhere except these 3 areas, but only trees can grow there, and only flesh and trees can grow here, and only farmland and flesh can grow here, right? So people are fighting for different stuff, and they want to ally with each other. You can have all sorts of really cool stuff that happens with that, rather than just boring bog standard fantasy, crops everywhere, wind everywhere, everything grows all the time, everything's normal. It's like, no, we gotta separate, we gotta segregate, we gotta actually make these things not just everywhere, because if everyone's super knowing this, right? If everything is the same, if all the ground is the same and it all behaves the same, then everything's boring. Nothing's interesting, right? You have to make it different, right? The way we make stuff different in fantasy nowadays is we say, there's a floating mountain, or there's just a mountain over there. It's like, we can do so much better, and this channel tells you how. Anyway, like and subscribe to the algorithm, please. Patreon in description if you want to help me actually make products with this, please do. I really want to quit my job and do this full time. And I'm actively looking for team members to help me make this stuff into products and develop it, because right now, as you hear, it's a bunch of conceptual stuff in my head. I haven't actually, like, in the region of Kingdomia, there's this king and he lives here, and here's how this is the thing that happens in his world. He owns the King of the Hill, and he currently planted crops, but the orcs have been attacking from the south. I haven't actually written all this stuff out specifically to make a product for people to play, super awesome games in super awesome settings. I haven't done that yet. I need a team for that. I need funding for that. So anyway, like and subscribe, feed the algorithm, and God bless.